Here's a number that's supposed to make you feel better. Right now, in 2026, the official inflation rate in America is bouncing around somewhere between 2.5% and 3%. The Federal Reserve wants it back down to 2%. Turn on the news, and you'll hear economists say inflation is cooling, that things are getting back to normal, that the worst is behind us. And then you walk into a grocery store. You grab the same cart you've bought for years. Eggs, bread, coffee, the boring stuff. You get to the register and the number is just wrong. Higher, again. You check your account and somehow there's less breathing room than last year, even though your paycheck technically went up. So you stand there doing the math in your head, and none of it adds up. The government says prices barely moved. Your wallet says you got robbed. Both of those are true at the same time. And once you understand why, you'll never look at that little inflation number the same way again. So let's pull it apart. Because inflation isn't just a percentage. It's the quietest, most efficient wealth transfer ever invented, and almost nobody notices it happening to them in real time. Start with the first layer, the one that makes people the angriest once they see it. The official number isn't a lie, exactly. It's a very carefully dressed up version of the truth. The government tracks prices using something called the Consumer Price Index, and the way they build that index has a few features that quietly flatter the final result. The first one is called substitution. In plain English, say the price of beef goes through the roof. A normal person looks at that and says, beef got way more expensive, that's inflation. But the index assumes that when beef gets too pricey, you'll just switch to chicken. So instead of fully counting that painful beef spike, the calculation quietly swaps in the cheaper meat. The logic is that you adapted, so your cost of living didn't really rise. Sit with that. The measurement assumes that when you get priced out of what you actually wanted and downgrade to the cheaper thing, that somehow isn't inflation. But you and I both know being forced to trade down is inflation. That's exactly what getting poorer feels like. You didn't choose chicken because you love chicken. You chose it because beef robbed you. Then there's the second trick, with a fancy name, hedonic quality adjustment. It's simpler than it sounds. Say a new car costs a lot more this year than last. You'd think, fine, cars got more expensive, count it. But the index looks at that car and goes, well, this model has a better backup camera and a nicer screen and a more efficient engine, so it's not really more expensive, it's just a better product. So part of that price increase gets erased. It doesn't count as inflation. It counts as you getting more value. The problem is you didn't ask for the fancier screen. You needed a car. But on paper the price hike vanishes into a quality upgrade, and the official number stays nice and calm. Now, to be fair, there's a real argument for doing it this way. Statisticians will tell you these adjustments make the data more accurate over long stretches, and there's some truth to that. But here's what matters for you and me. These methods protect the headline number. They keep the macro data looking stable. What they do not protect is the real experience of a normal person trying to fill a fridge and a gas tank. The number is engineered to reassure. Your life is not. That's layer 1. The official figure is shaved down by design. But that's not even the biggest part. Because here's the mistake almost everyone makes with that 2.5% or 3% number. They think it means prices are calming down. It does not. And this is the single most important idea in this whole video, so let me be clear. That number is a year-over-year measurement. It tells you how much prices went up compared to 12 months ago. That's it. So when you hear inflation is only 2.5%, what that actually means is, on top of everything that already happened, prices climbed another 2.5% this year. And what happened over the last few years was not small. You lived through it. That stretch where prices didn't creep, they lurched. Where the grocery bill jumped between 1 month and the next and you noticed? Where rent, gas, the everyday stuff all climbed hard and fast. That happened. And here's the part that matters. None of it got reversed. Prices didn't come back down. They just stopped sprinting and settled into a steady climb from a much higher starting line. Think of it like a hill. For a couple of years, you sprinted up a brutally steep slope. Now people are cheering because the slope got gentler, but nobody's walking you back down. You're still way up at the top, out of breath, and still going up, just slower. Inflation is cooling doesn't mean you get your money back. It means the bleeding slowed. The wound is still there. That's why the number and your gut are at war. The percentage measures the speed of the increase. Your wallet feels the total altitude. 2.5% stacked on top of everything that already piled up and never came back down isn't relief. It's just a slower robbery. And it gets worse, because there's a specific kind of inflation that refuses to let go. Economists have a version called Core CPI, where they strip out food and energy because those two bounce around wildly month to month. What's left is supposed to be the calmer, more honest core. And in 2026, that core number is stuck somewhere between 3 and 3.5%, higher than the headline, higher than the Fed's target. And it is not budging. Why does that matter? Because core inflation is where the sticky stuff lives. The cost of services and shelter, your rent, your insurance premiums, the bill from the mechanic, a haircut, a doctor's visit, the plumber. These prices do not fall. Ever. A haircut has never once in history gotten cheaper. Once your landlord raises the rent, that's the new floor, forever. Once your insurer hikes your premium, good luck getting it back down. Food and energy can spike and dip. But this services and housing core just grinds upward and locks in every gain. So when that core number stays high, it's telling you the expensive parts of your life, the ones you can't opt out of, are quietly resetting to a permanently higher level. You can skip the beef. You cannot skip rent. Quick reality check for everyone watching outside the United States. If you're in the UK, Canada, or Australia, you might think this is an American problem. It isn't. The exact same machinery is running in your country right now. Different agency, different acronym, same design. Your official number has been cooling too, while your groceries, your rent, and your energy bills tell a completely different story. The specific numbers change. The trick does not. Okay, so prices climbed a mountain and are still creeping up from the peak. Fine, you might say, but my paycheck went up too, right? Wages are rising. Doesn't that cancel out? This is the third layer, and it quietly explains why so many people feel like they're running as fast as they can, and still sliding backward. Yes, wages went up. Your paycheck number is bigger than it used to be. But there's a number that matters way more, and almost nobody talks about it. It's called real wages. Real just means after you subtract inflation. Not how many dollars you earn, but how much those dollars can actually buy. And in 2026, real wages have basically flatlined. Depending on the quarter, they're bouncing anywhere from down about 0.5% to up maybe 0.33%. Round off the noise and it means one thing: zero. Your real buying power is standing completely still, and in a lot of those months it's slightly negative, which means you're going backward. Let that land. Your bigger paycheck did not make you richer. It ran a race against prices and, at best, tied. At worst, it lost. The number on your pay stub went up, and the number of groceries that pay stub can buy went down. That's not a raise. It's a pay cut wearing a bigger number as a disguise. And this is the part that actually makes me a little angry, because of how invisible it is. If your boss walked in and said, "Hey, I'm cutting your pay by 0.5% this year," you'd lose your mind. You'd be furious. You might quit. But when inflation does the exact same thing quietly, in the background, while your paycheck number politely goes up, you don't even see it happen. No announcement, no meeting. You just slowly feel worse and can't explain why. That's the genius of it. A pay cut nobody has to deliver to your face. So let's put the whole picture together, because now it makes sense. The official number is trimmed down by the way it's measured. It's a speed reading, not an altitude reading, sitting on top of a mountain of increases that already happened and never reversed. The stickiest, most unavoidable costs in your life are still climbing and locking in. And your wages, after you adjust for all of it, are standing still or slipping. That's not a glitch. That's the machine working exactly as designed. Inflation is a tax nobody voted for, collected by nobody in particular, and paid quietly by everybody who holds regular money and works a regular job. All right, I don't want to just dump all of that on you and walk away, because feeling doomed isn't useful and it isn't the point. So let's talk about what you can actually do with this. And let me be clear before I say a word. This is not financial advice. I'm not telling you to buy anything. And anyone who promises you a magic escape hatch from inflation is trying to sell you something. This is just how to think about it. First shift, and it's mostly mental. Once you truly understand what inflation is, you understand that cash sitting still is not safe. It feels safe. A pile of money in a basic account feels like the responsible, cautious choice. But if that money earns almost nothing while prices climb every year, then in real terms it's quietly shrinking. Standing still on an escalator going down is not staying put. Safe money that loses purchasing power every year isn't actually safe. It's just losing slowly enough that you don't notice. Second idea, learn to think in real returns, not just the number on the screen. If something pays you 2% and prices rise 3%, you're not making 2%. You're losing 1% in real terms. Always run the number through that filter. The question is never just how much is this growing. It's how much is this growing after inflation eats its share. That one habit changes how you look at every account you own. Third, the honest one. The goal isn't to magically beat inflation and get rich. For most regular people, the realistic goal is to stop being the person who gets hit hardest by it. And the people who get hit hardest are the ones holding the most idle cash, earning the least on it, and paying the highest interest on their debts. Inflation is brutal to lazy money. You don't have to become a stock-picking genius. You just have to stop volunteering to be the easiest target in the room. And fourth, the thing nobody can inflate away from you, what you can do, your skills, your ability to earn more, to negotiate, to make yourself worth a bigger paycheck. Prices climbing is partly out of your hands. Your earning power is one of the few things inflation can't quietly tax out from under you. In a world where the money itself is leaking value, the ability to go make more of it is worth more than ever. None of that is a magic fix. There isn't one. But there's a huge difference between getting quietly robbed because you never saw it coming and knowing exactly what's happening to your money and making deliberate choices about it. The first one is a victim. The second is just an adult with their eyes open. So here's where I'll leave you. Inflation was never really about a percentage on the news. It's a slow, silent redistribution of wealth, and it's happening right now, to you, whether you're paying attention or not. Behind that calm little 2.5%, there's a real dinner that got smaller, a doctor's visit somebody's putting off because they're scared of the bill, a rent check that quietly ate the raise you fought for. So I actually want to hear it. In your city, in your country, what's the one thing that's gone up so much it genuinely made you angry? And be honest, did your paycheck actually beat inflation this year, or did it just look like it did? Drop your real receipt in the comments. Because the official number has a story it wants to tell. But yours is the one that's actually true.